What else we got going on? Make gains quickly. Don't worry about eating some D4 vitamin or something. In my opinion, that's just cherry picking, bean counting crap. When it comes to supplements, I just recommend multivitamin, fish oil, creatine. That's it. If you want to have a pre-workout because you need a caffeine spike, you can do that, or you can just buy a caffeine pill. It doesn't matter. But that answers a question of supplements. So maybe you guys want to hear about the best steroid. Oh my gosh, what a controversial topic. Steroids, performance enhancing drugs. So I'm always honest with you guys on this channel. I've always tried to make sure I don't misrepresent myself or create unrealistic expectations for others. I've been on TRT for like 5 years. Doctor prescription, 200 milligrams per week, split into 2 doses. So testosterone is by far going to be the most effective in terms of creating muscle mass and whatnot. Obviously, disclaimer here, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an endocrinologist, I'm not recommending you go get on steroids, I'm just answering a question. What is the best steroid for bodybuilding? Obviously, it's going to be testosterone. And the reason why, because there's going to be trolls in here, and there's going to be people who say, what about tren? What about HGH? What about insulin? You can't stay on those perpetually, whereas you can stay on testosterone perpetually and remain somewhat healthy, is the important disclaimer there. Let's see. Going further, where unless you're at the tippy top of performance, you really don't need any supplement. You just need potatoes and chicken. Get your protein, get your veggies. Pretty straightforward. TRT, I think, have naturally collapsed test levels currently. Yeah, they don't make it easy. This is like one of the most criminal things ever. The laws around steroid use, pretty frustrating. In America, they're a class something drug. I can't remember what it is, but it's similar to being caught with heroin or crack or something like that. It's a big deal to get caught with steroids. And that the only reason that happened, steroids prior to the 80s, I think it was actually the 90s, didn't used to be illegal in the United States. It was all down to, if you want to know more about this, watch the documentary Bigger, Stronger, Faster. But long story short, what happened was this teenage kid in Texas was playing baseball, and he's like, a pretty popular kid. He looks like he's going to go to college and be a good athlete, all that stuff. He goes and commits suicide. He's like 16 years old or something. His dad goes into his bedroom, and turns out he finds some like testosterone vials. So obviously the kid was taking tests. And so then the dad takes this to like the state Supreme Court, saying it's because my kid was taking tests that his hormone levels got messed up, and that's why he killed himself, and now that's why we got to make steroids illegal. Seriously, that's why our entire country created laws about steroids being illegal. Because one kid killed himself in Texas. By the way, that court case, the father did not mention that the kid was previously on antidepressants and stopped taking them. So you got to understand, that's how our legal structure works. That's how our population thinks. They're easily manipulatable. How the fuck you say that word? They're gullible. It's like they were born yesterday. If you tell them something is bad, they'll just assume you're right, and they won't go do any of their research. They won't ask, how did you come to that conclusion? Based on what evidence? So now our entire country thinks steroids are, they think everybody who takes steroids has roid rage and is going to kill somebody the minute they get their temper upset. And that's not how it works. So, TRT should be a key ingredient of people's diet. It's important. Yeah, so then you get into the testosterone crisis, at least here in America, where test levels are either 30 or 40% lower than they were in only like 10 or 20 years ago. Tucker Carlson had that documentary about this, the fall of men or something like that, where, long story short, testosterone levels are just at record low for decades. And that's causing infertility, and it's causing effeminate, weak men. And the way you fix that is by normalizing your testosterone levels, optimizing your testosterone levels. That's why I go to my doctor. I say, I want high testosterone. That's what I want my baseline to be. I don't want it to be average. I don't want it to be low. I want my baseline to be at the high end of normal. And that's what you can get if you go to a TRT clinic. It's annoying because they'll draw your blood and you have to wait for your blood results to come back. And if your testosterone is naturally actually pretty good, they'll give you a hard time. And they may even say, I'm sorry, I can't give you testosterone because you actually have normal test levels. Meanwhile, important thing to note, if you're a 14-year-old girl, you can go to your doctor and say, hey, I want to get on hormonal treatment because having periods is annoying and I know it's going to help with my acne. Can you do that for me? Oh, yeah, sure. Here's some hormones. So if you're a guy and you say, I feel like I'll be happier if I have some tests, a fully grown adult man, nope, can't do it. But if you're a not even old enough to drive female and you want a prescription to alter your hormonal levels, they'll prescribe you that. Even worse, if you're a 13-year-old female and you go in and say, hey, I am not comfortable being a female anymore. I actually think I'm a man. They'll give you testosterone. If you're a 13-year-old girl who wants to be a man, they'll give you testosterone. But if you're a fully grown adult man making decisions for yourself, fully informed decisions, can't do it. Sorry, you're not a 13-year-old girl. No testosterone for you. No roid rage for you. It's comical. Like when you actually step back and explain it to people this way, what's going on, what the current laws are, why those laws got put into place in the first place. You can't help but make fun of it because it is preposterous. I fully agree, Avery. Men do need to organize and change society to be patriarchal again. I mean, that's the truth. This is why I get banned from social media platforms and why I can't share half of these streams that I do. I would like it if I could just push them straight to YouTube, but I can't. I have to go in and edit them and cut out clips like this where I say that we have to return to a patriarchy where the men call the shots. We don't need women in the workplace. Women need to be focused on being caretakers for the family. Let's see. Men never organize. We have this omerta code and this whole, turn the other cheek idea. Yeah, if you guys don't know what omerta is, because that's a cool word to know, that's a silent agreement kind of thing. And I think this argument can be misconstrued as us against those women, but we just want to have those same rights. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, if you're a woman who wants to take control of your hormones, nobody asks any questions at all. But if you're a young man who simply wants to be more muscular, wants to be more optimistic, wants to have higher energy levels, wants to have a high libido, can't do it. That's too much of a threat to the matriarchy that we're trying to create. You know, they really do think the patriarchy, the tyrannical patriarchy, is why we are having all these problems when it's the literal opposite. It's the feminization of society that has clown world unfolding right in front of us. I am against women, though, because current status quo favors women and treats men as slaves. Yeah, I will say, look, there is some good news about this, guys. The current status of men and women and how we relate, it's not going to last. It's not going to last. And whether or not it happens in our lifetime, that's unclear. But when I see big picture, because as mentioned, you know, as a Christian, I look at things in regards to the millennia-long fight that we're in. There have been times in the past where people have tried this, where they've tried to subvert biology. They've tried to slide in an agenda that says something along the lines of women can run a society just as well as men can. And that's not true. It's just not. You know, birth rate collapsing, absolutely. America has a net negative birth rate. The only reason America's population, when you look at it on a line graph, it has gone up. The only reason it has gone up is because of immigration. We've let in 5 million immigrants in the last couple years. But we have a net negative Native American, not Indian. I mean, people born and raised in America are not having enough kids to make the population go up. The only way our population is going up is by bringing people who aren't American into our country. And so they have no attachment to this country. They have no attachment to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the entire story of why America came to be in the first place, fighting back against a monarchy. What is the process of getting TRT prescribed? Great question. So, go to your normal, what do they call it? Your PCP, primary care physician. Tell them that you're worried about your testosterone levels. They'll pull your blood work and they'll test for your free testosterone and total testosterone. And if they deem that they are in the low range, they might actually prescribe them for you. What you'll find with a lot of primary care physicians is that they don't receive a financial kickback for testosterone treatments. So they'll typically align themselves with the mainstream narrative of steroids are bad. If you take steroids, you're going to go out and kill people. So they won't often prescribe. I know this because this is what I did. I tried to play it by the book. I tried to go to my actual doctor and get a prescription for low testosterone, and they wouldn't give it to me. So don't give up there. There's still a legal way to do it. You have to go and find sometimes they call them rejuvenation clinics. Sometimes they just call it a hormone clinic. Sometimes they call it a testosterone replacement therapy clinic. So yeah, get on Google, just type in TRT clinic in the name of the city that you live in. And unfortunately, you'll probably have to pay out of pocket. I mean, that's the big thing. Is that if you could have succeeded in going through your primary care physician, it could have actually been covered by your medical insurance. But after getting shot down from them and telling you my story, I went to a local TRT clinic, who has doctors who have degrees and they have the full legal authority to give you a prescription. It's just that your medical insurance won't cover it through a TRT clinic. Did you see mood changes after going on test? Absolutely. I had very low energy levels and was definitely depressed and just more pessimistic before being on testosterone. And that's not unique to me. Those are just general low test symptoms. And so having been on test now for 5-ish years, maybe even 6 by now, my life just got immediately better. Basically, like that's the simplest, most direct way to say it was virtually everything about my life got better. Nobody likes taking 2 shots a week. I do mine Mondays, Thursdays, injections. And there's alternatives for that. You can get testosterone cream that you put on every day is another way to achieve the same dosage. I don't like doing, I don't know, it's just personal preference. I got used to the shots. And so it's not a big deal for me. Existential climate of men in general is very easy to demoralize men. So when your test levels are low, you get demoralized more easily. When your test levels are high, and whatever conflict arises, whatever discouraging event happens, you have more confidence to respond and say, no, this isn't going to bother me. This isn't going to distract me from my goals. I'm not going to do what you're telling me to do. I'm not going to say that men can get pregnant. I'm not going to say that women should be in charge. I'm not going to do any of this stuff you guys are saying I'm supposed to do. Your willingness to fight back for your own opinions goes up the more healthy of a testosterone level you have. And this is exactly why they've intentionally crashed testosterone levels. Men with low test are easier to control. That's just a biological fact. And it's not a fluke. It's not like, oh, wow, we got so lucky that these people now have low test and they're easier to control. If you think that's what happened, then you're glib. They intentionally eroded our food supply chain with all of these added ingredients, all the soy, all that stuff, to the point where the sustenance, the very things we eat to stay alive, are eroding our testosterone levels. And then the behavioral addictions that they have shoved down our throat, the pornography addiction, the video game addiction, the entertainment addiction, where we just sit there with an IV, in our blood, mass consuming all of this trash propaganda instead of going and doing productive physical activity, such as lifting, such as hiking, going out and playing with your dog, going and playing sports. All of these things that men used to do, men now spend that same amount of time playing video games, watching the newest Marvel movies, being soy boys. Okay, how did your training change with testosterone, and how soon did you see the physique changes? I got to go back in time. Let's see. To answer the second question first, how fast do you actually start seeing physique changes? Not going to lie, pretty fast. Especially if you're starting from a point of having low testosterone, and then you suddenly shift to the high end of the range. Your body will be very appreciative of having high testosterone. You'll immediately start, assuming you don't change your calories, because your calories are going to determine what your body fat looks like and what your composition is. Assuming your calories stay the exact same and you just add testosterone, and assuming that you're hitting the gym for all your sessions, your body will start to recomposition. You'll actually be able to maintain a lower body fat level at all times on the same amount of calories. So that's one. You get leaner faster. But simultaneously, testosterone's obvious, most attractive benefit is the ability to accrue muscle faster and hold more muscle once you're at the ceiling. That's only relevant once you've reached your natural potential. But in the meantime, testosterone helps you accrue and get to your natural potential much faster. So, like, for example, it typically takes, and this is based on the research, this isn't just Josh throwing random numbers out here. It's pretty much agreed upon that in the span of 4, maybe 5 years, most people will reach their natural max. Their FFMI, fat-free mass index, it'll top out after about 4 or 5 years of training. And that's assuming your training is consistent and assuming your diet and nutrition was consistent. Whether or not your training itself changes based on testosterone, no. You should still be running the same routines. You should still be running, whether it's push-pull legs or a bro split. Your gym routine doesn't change whether or not you're on testosterone. I mean, I will say that testosterone gives you the advantage of being able to recover faster, so you can more easily hit each muscle group twice per week. But I'm just saying it's more easy to do so. Just because it's more easy doesn't mean you couldn't do it before you were on testosterone. It's just that you'll have higher energy levels and your body will respond more encouragingly. It'll put on muscle mass faster, you'll get leaner faster. And when those things are happening, you tend to be more motivated, right? Like when you see that the work you're doing is paying off even faster and more effectively, that plays into your motivation. So this is why when you see people get on testosterone, there's pretty dramatic improvement in their physique in that first 6 to 12 months. It's because it's all connected. The accrual of muscle, if they were at their natural max, there's suddenly a new ceiling. The nutrient partitioning from the food that they're eating is improved. And then their motivation to train is improved. And their worldview is improved. Their general outlook and their happiness, all of it gets better. I should say that I don't want to sit here and talk only about the benefits of testosterone. Like any drug, there are drawbacks. Let me catch up with chat real quick because there's probably some good messages in here I don't want to neglect. Let's see. A lot of WWE stars like The Rock, who did steroids, who went crazy and tried to kill their girlfriend in the 1990s. What was that guy? man, Chris Benoit, I think, was it? There were a couple of cases in the 90s, especially with professional wrestlers, who were very obviously using steroids, and they had some kind of dramatic response to them. And so, how that works, how the phenomenon of roid rage works, how much of that is urban legend versus how much of that is real. I can go more into that topic. Let me write that down. Roid rage. Roid rage. One problem of men I can point out freely that we are dumb. Because we are dumb, we did not evolve our weapons into the modern world. We still use aggression and physical violence as a response to almost everything. I mean, well, that's the solution that's always worked. It's worked for millennia. I mean, obviously we have guns and stuff now, but go as far back as the hunter-gatherer days. If a conflict went down and you were physically stronger than the other guy, you could take his stash of berries. You could take his stash of meat and animal furs if you were the stronger guy. That shit worked back then. Nowadays, you're right in that being physically stronger doesn't necessarily have those kind of implications. It has implications in regards to your confidence, though. If you're a physically strong and capable of self-defense man, you go into every scenario with a different baseline of confidence than men who don't have those things. So that's like a hidden benefit of getting jacked or becoming muscular and strong, is that your self-defense in both physical means and mental, psychological debate improves. Would you recommend sleep deprivation to lower your T levels the day before your doctor visit to potentially get a higher dose? Sleep deprivation. Yeah, so there, what he's referring to is the diurnal rhythm of testosterone. It's probably not going to make that big of a difference, frankly. You can try it. Another thing you can try, this is me just giving out terrible advice. Don't do this, but I'm saying it is true that it will lower your testosterone levels in the short term, is if you go and binge drink the night before. Don't binge, like, to the point where you get risky health outcomes, but it is true that if you consume, a decent amount of alcohol, the next day your testosterone levels will suffer. But yeah, Avery called that out, that it's not, sleep deprivation the night before isn't going to really lower your testosterone levels that much. Oh, you're totally right about the second part too, Avery, though. The intentionally crashing your testosterone levels so that you can get a test prescription. I'll say that some doctors, the ones who are actually educated, they see through that. A lot of guys on 4chan talk about doing that because they can read all your other blood lipid levels as well, and they'll see the manipulation. So that's why primary care physicians tend to raise a red flag whenever a guy comes in with low testosterone saying he wants test. They'll look at everything else, and they'll just immediately see you as some jacked bodybuilder asshole who wants access to testosterone, and that immediately puts them on the defensive, and it'll make it so that they won't prescribe you anything. And you'll probably end up getting on a fucking watch list for some guy who wants access to drugs. So my honest recommendation is if you've done what he said, if you've used testosterone, came off it to intentionally crash your levels, if you did that, you need to go to a hormone clinic and tell them the truth, because they don't, like, they're a for-profit business. They want you to be on testosterone. They're not going to necessarily completely neglect your health to give you testosterone, but if you walk into a TRT clinic, not your doctor, but a TRT clinic with intentionally crashed testosterone levels, and you don't lie to them, do not lie to them. Tell them, I was on testosterone, loved the way I felt much more positive, I had better energy, I had a great libido, I loved life, but I wanted to do things the right way, I want to get a doctor's prescription, and so that's why I'm here. This is exactly, a conversation I've had with the doctor before. I'm telling you, this works. But just be honest with them. I was on test, I came off, I want to be back on, and they'll say, okay, well, we need to draw your blood. No matter what, they're going to draw your blood. So there's no way around that. this is how it worked for me. They drew my blood. You come back the next week. They say, yeah, your testosterone levels are obviously crashed because you came off of testosterone. What we want to do to get you back to baseline is set you up on a prescription for 200 milligrams per week or somewhere around that. And there you go. You have to pay out of pocket, but it is what it is. If you take too many steroids, you can lose your mind a little. Steroids definitely improve your mood, but if you take like 100 more times the recommended dose, you'll feel side effects like lots of volatility in your emotions. Or if you do steroids like Halo, which is famous for making people super violent or angry. I will say trenbolone, aka Tren, is the one steroid that I've taken that really did alter my mood in terms of aggression, and you really have to be self-aware. If you're going to use Tren, then you need to know what your triggers are, and you need to the relationships around you, whether that's a girlfriend or a family member or coworkers. You got to be really careful with them. Like Tren has a nickname of something along the lines of the relationship destroyer. It really will. Some people just say turn you into an asshole. You get much less patient, was my experience. And so if you're not a master of self-control, your patience is going to be much shorter. And so everyday occurrences will make you aggravated. And if you can't handle that aggravation, you'll lash out at people. And that's what people call roid rage. So to finally connect back to what's true about roid rage, testosterone increases general levels of aggression, but not in a violent way. Some steroids, especially Tren, Halo, increase that aggression even more to the point where many people who use it have a harder time controlling their mood and controlling that aggression. But once again, that's down to the individual. That's not the drug. Drugs don't force you to behave a certain way. If you're an individual who is predisposed to having, mood swings, don't take tests. Don't take Tren. Don't take steroids, period. But if you've worked on yourself, or maybe you're just naturally somebody who has a good composure, you should be able to take steroids safely, so long as you're doing so legally, so long as you're getting your blood work checked regularly, etc. You got any posting routines or tips? You're looking good like a Greek god in the bottom right. Appreciate that, man. I really do. Posing routines or tips. I don't have any kind of routine of my own that I just say, hey, go practice these. Where I kind of learned the basics from was the actual sport of bodybuilding, the people who compete in bodybuilding. If you just look up open bodybuilding, that's the largest division of bodybuilding, open bodybuilding poses, that's what will give you a list of the poses you need to learn, such as front double bicep, back double bicep, front and rear lat spread, most muscular, side chest, all that stuff. And posing actually is very, very important in terms of if you want to take cool progress pictures, if you want to have cool videos of your physique. This is actually kind of surprising. People don't know this. Just having a good body, getting lean with some muscle mass, it doesn't mean you can just snap, take a picture, and look great. There's a lot that goes into the posing and the lighting that really does change how good your physique looks. It can make you look substantially larger than you actually are. Like in that video that's playing in the bottom right down there, that's from this summer, it was in September, so that's like 3 months ago. And I was like 170 pounds in that video. And there's a lot of people who don't know any better, who don't know anything about bodybuilding. They'll see that, and just based on, seeing that I'm a muscular guy, they'll think I weigh like 200 something pounds. And that's not true. It's like, no, that's 170 pounds, guys. How expensive is TRT? For my prescription, it's $150 a month. That's USD currency. You don't even need to say that. You can say that I did test, but now I can't get it back up. So now I have permanently harmed testosterone levels. I wanted to do mine completely truthful, so that's the route that I took. I didn't want to try to game my doctor just because I was tired of trying to do all these tricks. I was like, look, I'm just going to be honest with you. I was on test before. I want to be back on test. I want to have high testosterone levels. I want you to help me. I want to make sure I'm doing it in a healthy way. So I'm fully willing to come in here once or twice a month and get my blood drawn. And within 3 weeks, I had tests, being delivered to my house within 2 weeks. Let's see. Just fly to a country where steroids are legal or very easy to buy them. Use them in that country for 2 weeks, then fly back. Yeah, I mean, that is technically a legal way to do it, but bro, you're talking about $1,000 plane ticket to fly to Taiwan or something, not to mention hotel fees while you're there for 2 weeks, then fly back. So that's a pretty extreme way to get on testosterone legally. Do I wish I got on TRT sooner? How soon is too soon to you? No, to the first question. I'm glad I waited. And frankly, I should have waited longer. I got on when I was about 2 years into my lifting career. And the truth really is, I mentioned earlier that the science says you have about 4 years worth of gains before you really cap out, before your natural max comes into play. And so I got on testosterone sooner than I really needed to. But I mean, so a lot of people debate about this. Like, should you wait until you achieve your natural max to get on testosterone? That's the kind of fundamental question here. Obviously I didn't, so I'd be a hypocrite to recommend that. I will say, do not get on testosterone your first year. But just simply because you don't even know what you're doing in terms of correct form, understanding what frequency you need to be training at, having a fully dialed in diet, the discipline and all that stuff. You got to lock that in before you start using performance enhancing drugs, because the misconception is that even if I'm only training mediocre, if I add some drugs to this, I'll get better results. That's not true. You have to be training correctly and dieting correctly in order for the drugs to really make a difference. Not necessarily what everybody wants to hear. It's not what people believe, but if you're going to get on PEDs before you've reached your natural max, the only reason you should be doing so is because you have full confidence that your diet is dialed in and that your discipline in the gym is already dialed in. Oh, let's see. Did you ever analyze Helmut Stribble for what his stack is and what he must do to get in that shape? Is that the guy that's like astronomically lean? I feel like I recognize that name. The guy with the construction hat? Let's pull him up real quick. We'll take a look. Yeah, I never looked into what PEDs he was taking, but there's no denying that the guy's sitting there at 2 or 3% body fat. It's unhealthy, and I hope that he's not sustaining that for long periods of time, because even like when I'm in that shape, in that summer shape, that's somewhere around 5%, and it's hard to stay that way with decent energy levels, with decent sex drive, with decent lifts, not to mention not going crazy from the lack of food. Like, so you just get hungry after you've been dieting for, my summer cut is always 4 months at a minimum. So after you've been in a caloric deficit for 4 months, you finally get down to, 5-ish% body fat. It's awesome. You look great. Everybody's looking at you. How it works for me is I tend to enjoy that for about a month, maybe 2 months, and then I give it up. And then I go back to my winter bulk for the next 6 months before doing it all again. That's my annual cycle, is from, you have to start from somewhere, but let's just say my summer's cut starts in May. I diet all the way up to September, and that puts me, after 4 months, in the low percentage body fat. I get to enjoy looking really cool and having these videos and all this stuff for about a month or two. And then when the season changes here, it gets cold. And so another big red pill about having a cool physique, this is a little disappointing, but I'll tell you guys. Let me catch up on chat real quick. What were the biggest physical changes you saw for TRT? The it's easier to stay lean, and then just the accrual of muscle mass. There are people who will point out shoulders and traps in terms of upper body development. There are more testosterone receptors in those muscle groups, and so this is where I'm not going to say it's an urban legend, but this is where people will look at a picture of a guy who has, these big, round shoulders and say that that's the telltale signal that they're on steroids. If you have big 3D delts, then you're on steroids. It's actually like 80% true, honestly. Like, you can do as a natural a lot of shoulder training and get pretty good shoulder development. But when you see Derek from More Plates, More Dates, for example, any professional bodybuilder, they just have these extremely round 3D globe-like delts. And that is a effect of taking performance-enhancing drugs. And I'm not judging. Like, it's part of my physique. That's why I have good shoulders. That's why I always have. So it's a nice part of the benefits package, I would say. I have a lot of the low test symptoms and have just been recommended to get tested by my psych, just worried about losing out on gains, only in year 2 of lifting. If your psychologist is telling you, hey, you need to go check your hormones, that should be a priority, like before you're even talking about what is this going to do to my physique and what is this going to do to my gains. A healthy mind is critical. A healthy mind comes before a healthy body. So if testosterone is going to improve your mental acuity and your overall happiness and fulfillment in life, which if you're low testosterone, it will. Then I would be doing it. I would be going to the TRT clinic just for that purpose and for that motivation. I get it that you still have a couple years of lifting left and you don't want to, how can you put it? I know what you're talking about. Like, should I get those last 2 years of gains before relying on the additional supplementation? And it kind of sucks for people who are natural, honestly, because how it works is you're going to get to fast forward through those 2 years. If you get on PEDs, you're going to be able to make those 2 years worth of gains in less time. I'm not going to tell you how much, but it's going to be less time. Whether that's in 1 year or 18 months, a year and a half, you're going to shave some number of months off of getting to your 4-year physique in less time than 4 years. That's what happened with me. I got on test a couple years into lifting, and whereas it normally would have taken me a couple extra years to get to my fat-free mass index cap, I got there faster. And that's what PEDs do. That's one of the reasons why people take them. But here's the important part. Once you get to your natural max while on PEDs, when you come off, the reversion effect of how much mass you lose doesn't necessarily drop back below your natural max because it's still your natural max. Your natural max never goes down based on PEDs, using them or not using them. Your natural max is based on your frame, your height, your skeletal frame. So those things don't change. So basically, you'll be able to fast forward, get to your natural max faster, and then if you do come off, you actually get to continue hanging out at your natural max pretty easily. Let's see. The guy you were talking about, Helmet, the especially lean dude, there's not honestly that many drugs you can take to maintain for long periods of time that 5% or less body fat. Like, you can take Clen, you can take DNP. You can't take DNP sustained, though. You can take DNP for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. But, that guy stays very lean for months at a time. DNP will completely wreck you, by the way. Don't take it. Personal experience. Do not take DNP. What else we got here? Your face changes. Your body can change shape. Shoulders are a tiny muscle. That's why it's hard to get rounded delts. He must have very low fat levels naturally. Yeah, I have a feeling he also just maintains a very low caloric diet. And like the guy Athlean X, what's his name, Cavalieri, forgot his first name. He stays lean year round, between 5 and 7%. But the thing is that's not a genetic gift. He clearly says that he stays very tight on his calories all year long, and that's just a conscious sacrifice. Like he misses out on eating desserts. It is what he has. He says 1 piece of carrot cake per year on his birthday. It is what it is. Like, do you like desserts more, or do you like walking around looking like an alien all year? Yeah, Jeff Cavalier. I will say his channel is awesome. His content is awesome. I learned a lot from it over the years. Nobody is 100% right on their advice. There's obviously subjective content in there, but for the most part, Jeff Cavalier's channel, called Athlean X, for anybody who's never been there, it is actually a great place to go to learn form and to learn creative ways to get around injuries and heal injuries. You can have desserts, just have sugar desserts, no fat. I say have all the dessert you want, just avoid the fat. I don't really care whether it's sugar, which is just a carb, or fat. I just look at the overall calorie count on a dessert. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I don't subscribe to the whole macros thing. I subscribe to calories and protein. I have never once actively shifted between carbs and fats. Like, that physique you see down there on the bottom right is me eating a whole lot of carbs every day. Calories are not calories, and fat is the only thing that matters. That's an interesting take on it. I believe in the law of thermodynamics because I use Microsoft Excel to test it. I tracked my daily calories every day for 7 years. I finally stopped last year when I figured out that I didn't need to do it anymore. But I tested the law of thermodynamics. Calories in, calories out. I consumed exactly 2250 calories for a week. And then I moved it to 2500 calories a week. And then I moved it to 2750 calories a week. And I tested what the different outcomes were at every level. And that's how you figure out when you're in a caloric surplus or not, or a caloric deficit. So I fully trust calories, measuring calories. It worked for me. It's worked every summer cut. That's how I get down to such lean levels. Fat is a pointless macronutrient. I think carbs and fat, they're both pointless. All you need to know is protein and calories. That's how it's worked for me. Fat only occurs in farm animals. Isn't fat? I mean, I don't know. I'm not great in terms of the chemistry, but I do recall hearing that fat is essential for certain cognitive functions, and especially an appropriate ratio of what do they say? Good fats and bad fats, like fish fat, the omega-3s. That's why I take fish oil. Your body prefers carbs for energy. That is true. Carbs are always the preferred source of energy. They're simplest to break down. When you eat fat, it just makes more fat. That's not true. I mean, that's not true, simply because let's just say if I wanted to spend all of my calories on a good day, or on any given day, on fat, so long as I'm not in a caloric surplus, I won't gain weight. I won't gain fat. Like, that's the problem with the macronutrient being called fat, is they believe it's the same thing as tissue fat. So people will try to, and are scared of, eating the macronutrient fat because they think it's equivalent to tissue fat, and that's just not how it works. As I said, the calories you get, whether they're protein, carbs, or fat, it doesn't matter. None of them increase your body fat percentage if you are not in a caloric surplus. Good fats in fish also. Yeah, that's where you ideally are getting your fat from. I actually recently tripled my fish oil intake because my fat ratios, my cholesterol levels need to be tweaked up a little bit. And I found that out through getting my blood work done at my doctor. So it's one of the reasons you got to do it. Nobody likes to do it, but you need to. Glycogen from cutting, carbs, and it doesn't mean you lose fat. You also have moisture and water levels. To a degree, but anytime you're losing weight, it's going to be a combination of water weight and stored body fat and potentially muscle. If you're in a caloric deficit, you're going to be, somewhat catabolic. So the energy needs you have, because you're not getting enough food, it's going to pull from both fat and muscle. Obviously, keeping your protein high will keep that ratio skewed more towards losing fat than losing muscle. I get scanned in terms of my measurement. I don't just use a scale. I get a electronic impedance measurement that shows body fat, skeletal tissue, water weight, all that stuff. Granted, even those are subject to a margin of error. I mean, this is why you can't just hyper concentrate on the numbers, because whatever testing method you're using, all of them have a margin for error. Whether it's a caliper body fat measurement, a bod pod, a DEXA scan, electronic impedance, an old-fashioned scale, all of them, they're just feedback mechanisms. You write down what it says, you do it again next week, and you see what direction you went in. Yeah, Avery. I mean, that's how you can get as close to measuring straight up fat loss as possible, is using one of the more advanced methods, such as a DEXA scan or a bod pod, and it'll tell you a better estimate of, okay, your skeletal mass obviously didn't change last week or last month. That doesn't change. But they are capable of measuring what water you have in your body and what lean muscle mass is in your body. And then the only remaining part of that equation is body fat.